Hey everybody, it's Ryan from Pie Records, and I'm here with John from Tombstones in Their Eyes. How are you doing?
I'm good, Brian or Ryan. Sorry, God, it's early out here. Good to see you, and great to be here.
Thank you for getting up so early. I'm assuming you're in California, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you for getting up so early to do this. Um, and I appreciate your time. I checked out your music, and it's the first kind of psychedelic shoegaze music that I'm having on the show. So I'm glad
Oh, cool.
I'm glad I'm getting something different in the mix.
Yeah,
So that's why I found it interesting to talk to you guys.
cool.
So tell me a little bit about describe your music for the fans that are listening.
Well, yeah, it's at its core, it's rock and roll, influenced by all my influences, which include punk, which include psychedelic, which include shoegaze, which include noise. I'm been around for a while, and always sort of followed the underground sort of path, and so it's a conglomeration of all that. We get lumped into a thing called shoegaze or psychedelic or psych rock, they call it these days, and so it's kind of like dark psych rock, I would call it.
Awesome. And what sort of themes do you like to cover in your music?
It's pretty personal, for the most part. It's mostly it's I've had my issues with depression and anxiety and things like that, and there's a certain darkness I have, sort of, I think maybe we all have inside, that I like to focus on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I found that in your music, and I have myself a problem with anxiety, which is part of the reason I do these interviews, is because I have a hard time talking with people. And one of the
Yeah.
things I thought is just do it and build up kind of a tolerance or a strength. Do you find that getting your lyrics out and singing them out is often cathartic?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, there's nothing better for writing songs than being, super depressed or super anxious,
Yeah,
and really, it's much harder to write songs when you're happy.
yeah, totally. Um, so how do you get that great fuzz sound?
I have a lot of fuzz pedals, but I really am into sort of vintage big muffs, or I have a really nice pedal from just, what do they call it, Death by Audio, that I use a lot, and I just mix and match, and but it's all from a fuzz pedal, not from an effect in a recording, program or anything.
Yeah. So you guys have quite a bit of music out. Do you want to tell us about how long you've been around and how you got the band started?
Yeah, that's a good story. You know, I've I've been in the sort of into music for a long time, and been in a lot of sort of crappy bands that no one's heard of, and at some point I got sort of tired of being a band, so I took a little break, a few years off, and during that period I met an old friend from that I've known since I was about 13. um, we were best friends from about 13 to 18, and we did our first tour together when he was playing bass with Battalion of Saints, who you
Oh
may have
wow.
heard of. I don't know. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
a San Diego hardcore band, and we did a tour with them together. You know, they just brought me along as a little kid friend or whatever. I was 18 years old, and you know, so that was a long time ago. And we both went our separate ways at 18, and he went into playing with the Battalion of Saints and Meatman and some other bands, and I went off on my own way and did the whole rock and roll lifestyle thing by tour managing my friend's band, and you know, then starting my own bands and things like that. And we kind of were spit out the other side and kind of got our lives together, you know, because you know that can tear you up. And we were into drugs and booze and rock and roll and all that stuff. And so, anyways, we reconnected many years later, and he lives in New York. I live in Los Angeles, and we became instant best friends again. And we said, why don't we write some songs together? And so we started doing that using GarageBand and Dropbox. You know, and Dropbox, we would share the files, you know, the projects. And so I would write something, and he would write, you know, part or tweak part of it, or put something down himself. And basically it ended up being Tombstones in Their Eyes. And that's when we chose the name, when it was just the two of us doing our little thing. So we had no idea it would, you know, go any further than that. And so the next phase was when I decided we had enough songs to record a real record. And I enlisted a couple of local friends, a guy named Josh Drew on bass and a Samuel Sherwood on drums, and we went into a real studio and put down the first record. And it's called Sleep Forever. And I hope I'm not going on too long, but there's a little more to the story.
Go ahead.
And so we did that record, and when it came time to mix, we looked around, and I found a studio run by a guy named Paul Rossler. Paul Rossler is very well known, at least in Los Angeles, for playing with a band called the Screamers, who were sort of the original synth punk band, and very well known and early, you know, punk band. And then, you know, also being almost, you know, he's actually plays keyboards on the first Dead Kennedys record. You know,
oh wow.
I mean, like, you know, he's been around, so he's done a lot of stuff. And he had a little studio, and we went in there and we did the mixing, and he became our guy at that point. And we've recorded and produced everything there ever since. And the first record was pretty spotty. We hadn't really like pinpointed a sound yet. You know, I think so. I think that was the issue. And you know, so about the songs don't hold together as well as they do on later releases. You know, but that's kind of the how the band formed and where we got to. You know,
that's pretty cool. You had some really good connections there. I love Battalion of Saints. I'm sure a lot of other people do too.
That was a fun tour to do.
I first heard of them in college. They were so big in the, you know, in the early 90s. They were like, everybody was Battalion of Saints.
Yeah, this tour was actually in '83, which shows you how old I am. I'm not going to do the math for you, but it was only 5 days, and basically it was a run up to San Francisco. And so we played at a place called the On Broadway with Crucifix and some other bands. I can't remember, Channel 3. And then we went and stayed at a place called the Tool and Die, which is a notorious sort of club in San Francisco, and played with a band called the F Ups, which I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
Sure.
It's a podcast, right? So they're the Fuck Ups and some other San Francisco bands. And actually that was a weird story because we took acid that night. We had the night off, and there was a knock on the door, and I went and opened the door, and it was El Duce from the Mentors. Which is a weird, I didn't know of him. I was only 18, and I didn't know, he was early on, and still a weird guy to meet when you're on acid or
Yeah.
anytime. Yeah. So that was a funny part of the story.
So why was he knocking on your door?
He was just up there, and I guess, wanted to party. So that's what we did.
That was crazy what happened later on in his life.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Interesting life.
the whole Courtney Love thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
And I don't know how much truth there is to that, but that's it's pretty insane.
Yeah.
So back to the music. What kind of guitars do you prefer to use? I love to hear about people's gear, amps, guitars.
Yeah, I've been through a lot in my lifetime. But right now, my main guitars, the two guitars I use mostly in Tombstones, are a Gibson ES-335 from the early 70s, and a fairly newish Gretsch. It's called a Tennessee Rose, which is a copy of the early Tennessean, Gretsch. So, but I've had a 64 Gretsch Tennessean. I've had, 19, a couple of 60s 335s. I tend to like the hollow body or semi hollow body guitars, and but I have tons of other. I've been through all kinds of guitars, and I still have a Les Paul special, I think they call it, from the early 70s. An Epiphone Casino, sort of Frankenstein guitar from the 60s, a Harmony Rocket from the 60s, a Fender 12-string guitar, which is pretty cool. They call it the Fender 12. It looks a little bit like a Jaguar.
Yeah.
And it's got a hockey stick sort of looking kind of a headstock. And so and then pedals, I've always been a pedal freak. I actually have a tattoo of a Big Muff on my arm, and I just love those, and I've had almost every version ever made, and I love fuzz. And then as this band has gone on, I've got more into also delay and reverb, and amps. Man, I've had tons. 64 Fender Super Reverb was one of my longtime amps. I've had a couple of early 60s Vox AC30s. Right now, I use an orange amp, and I have an Ampeg, what do they call it? The Gemini 2 or Gemini 1. It's got one big 15-inch speaker. So that's a little gear talk. Yeah, that's what I use right now.
Cool. What's it like seeing you guys live? Since you describe yourself on Instagram as a psych type band, shoegaze, what can people expect to see your shows when they come out to see you?
I would say, we haven't played live in a while, and but our last show was basically it's 3 guitars, bass, and drums, and so it's pretty heavy,
Yeah.
and it's going to be heavier than the records. It's going to be simpler than the records, probably a little bit, and this player moved out of town last summer, so we just found a new bass player to play live, and he's a monster. So it's gonna be pretty intense.
Awesome.
Loud.
How close are you getting to playing out in
I
California?
would say Well, bands are starting to play out in California now. We're probably a couple months out. We need to get it together, practice a bit and, and get a show or two booked. So I would say not till, what's it right now? It's almost June, July, August. So August or September, probably.
So you put out an album during quarantine, right?
Yeah. Put out actually 3 albums during quarantine.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you compile such a large amount of music?
I write a lot of songs, and so here's the albums that we put out. One was actually a collection of demos, so it doesn't really count, totally. It was just slipped out kind of quickly for some of the people that might be interested in where the songs originate, because our process is James and I do. James and I work on the demos sort of at home, and then I bring those into the studio and we redo the vocals and put live drums and all that kind of stuff. But so sometimes the demos have something that you can't recreate in the studio. So I wanted to put out some of those for some of the ones that I thought were the best ones, and so we put that out, and then we also put out a retrospective collection of our songs called Collection. It's a double record. I'll get you a copy.
Oh, awesome.
Digitally. And it basically what that is a lot of our stuff after the first record was put out on EP or single. And I wanted that to all have the vinyl treatment. So I collected it all and put it out on a double vinyl set.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, so we have that. So that's kind of like our catalog. I took some of the songs from the first record and then everything else up until a record we have called Maybe Someday, which was released a year ago or a year plus. And so basically the 3 vinyl things we have are the new record, which we did put out just recently and recorded during quarantine. The Collection, which is a double record of all of our, like most of our stuff, and then a record called Maybe Someday. So I'll get you all 3 of those, and we do have a lot of material.
That's fantastic to see that you've been working on the music this whole time. Speaking of about your problems with depression and things like that, as well as mine, it helps to keep working to keep that at bay. Would you say?
Right. For sure. Yeah. No, it's like hey, I can't do anything else during this time, so I can compile all this stuff and get it mastered and work on it, and it gave me something to do.
I love the fact that you put it out on vinyl because that's my favorite medium. And you and I, for probably the same reasons, prefer it that way, because when we were kids, we got to, look at the artwork, read the lyrics. The lyrics weren't so small. It was the complete package, and tell me what it's like when you get your own record and you sit down and you listen to it on vinyl for the first time.
No, it's pretty cool. It's like, like when we first started the band, I wasn't sure how we were going to release stuff, and we didn't release the first one on vinyl. And I will never put anything out again that's not on vinyl. It's like that's part of the process now. It's great. There's nothing like it. Yeah. So I'm glad it's having a resurgence too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which keeps the prices down, right?
We're trying, yeah. I mean, they're still expensive, but I'd like to lower the price on all our vinyl. So I'll have to talk to the record guys about that. We have a company called Somewhere Cold.
So Do you put your music out yourself, or is there a label involved? There's multiple labels involved?
Right now, there's multiple. So for the past few years, we've been working with a label called Somewhere Cold Records. They're out of not Lawrence, and a guy named Jason Lamoureux, very nice guy. And then with this new record, our studio that we record at is called Kid and Robot Studio, and it's owned by a very nice woman named Josie Cotton, who's
I
been in the
know
music
her.
scene for a long time herself. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So she owns the studio, and she started a label called Kid and Robot Records, and we were one of the first sort of signings because we're a regular at the studio, and the producer likes us a lot, and so now we're on two labels. They take care of most of the digital end of it and a lot of the promotion. And I actually end up, paying for the vinyl because that's, kind of an expense,
Yeah.
and Somewhere Cold handles the CDs and stuff like that. And they sell the vinyl for me. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So glad to hear it's on vinyl. I'm glad you get to experience how the cool feeling of having your own record, not just a digital format. That's got to be like a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
So if people want to get a hold of you for booking, or they want to listen to your music, where can they find you?
Well, there's a lot of ways these days, as you know. But I've recently put a site up for the band called tombstonesintheireyes.com. And it has a link to one of those link tree things where you can, hit all of our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter accounts and all that kind of stuff. So best place to go is probably there, or search us on Facebook or Instagram and just message us, if anybody's interested.
And you're on Bandcamp.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, can they buy copies of the vinyl on Bandcamp as well as the digital?
Yeah. Yeah. Either on the Somewhere Cold page or on somewherecoldrecords.bandcamp.com, I believe it is. And then ours is tombstonesintheireyes.bandcamp.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go back to listening to Tombstones in Their Eyes because I really enjoyed it. And just the fuzz. I love the sound of it.
Yeah, I love fuzz.
So I want to thank you so much. Before we go, I just want to give you a chance to say anything we may not have touched on.
I just want to, mention some of the band members, which I always forget. We have Josh Drew, who's been with us since the beginning, who switches between bass and guitar, and Steven Striegel, our drummer, who's been our stalwart drummer for a long time, and our new member, Paul Booton, who's on guitar. And those are the main guys. And then I already mentioned James Cooper, my old friend, Paul Rossler, they're a big part of it. And then I want to thank Kid and Robot Records and Somewhere Cold Records for helping support us. Those are the main things I always forget.
Awesome. I'm hoping people check you out after seeing this. And I wish you a great day, because I know it is early and you have the rest of your day to to go through. I hope everything's fine out there for you, being outside in the public and everything. I hope everybody's being safe, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's been great talking to you, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
You have a great day.